So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Copenhagen Airport. Now, British Airways. I'm flying with them today from here in Copenhagen across to London. I wouldn't ordinarily buy a business class ticket for a flight this short, but this is part of a much bigger trip and I ended up in business class by default. So I've travelled long haul on BA a few times recently, as I've reported on this channel, but it's been a little while since I've been on anything other than the shortest leg possible in business class, and I'm quite interested to see whether the service really is up to scratch. So is their short haul European business class product any good? If you'd like to find out. Wow, not much energy in that introduction, was there? It had been a long day and I was struggling to get excited about what would probably end up being a very routine BA flight. This was the 7th and final flight of a multi-partner booking I made through British Airways. Something I've mentioned but not really explained in the 6 preceding flight reviews. So in addition to sharing my experience on this flight, I'll talk in a little bit more detail about how I found this routing and how I booked it, hopefully with a little more energy. So if that sounds good, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me. I'd landed in from Helsinki. Copenhagen is well known for decanting arriving passengers straight into the departures area, which makes it a favourite for back-to-back turnarounds. So this was the Schengen area of the airport. I only had a little over an hour to make the connection to London, which is non-Schengen, so I didn't have time to linger as I needed to clear the passport formalities that sit between the two parts of the airport. The passport queue was non-existent, so I was straight through and I headed for the lounge so I could report on its delights. Well, that didn't work. This was bang on 7 PM and that's a pretty poor show to close the doors an hour before the departure time, so no lounge review in this video. I headed to the gate unlounged, and after spending a few moments wandering around, I noticed that the gate area was already getting crowded, so I headed in myself. There was a very slow boarding pass check to get into the gate's holding area. Notice that the boarding sequence that would be used was displayed on the screen behind the agent. At least I was able to get a view of the back half of the aircraft. A little bit of a wait, and then the advertised boarding process was completely ignored. Group Zeros were called forward first, which even though that wasn't advertised, was the correct process. This is a recently introduced benefit for those holding gold guest list status. Then they called...
Yes, boarding group 1, 2 and 3.
That was groups 1 through 3 if it wasn't clear. And perhaps 75% of the passengers surged forward. Come on BA, sort it out. It's really not hard to follow your own boarding procedures, particularly when they're advertised on a socking great screen right over the boarding door. A cursory glance at some of the boarding passes here. I guess all the heavy lifting was done as we entered the gate area, but if someone in group 9 fancied being first aboard, they would have had a pretty good chance of being able to do so. And of course the plane was not ready for us, so it was hashtag boarding not boarding for 3 or 4 minutes before they finally were ready to take passengers. That's a score of 1 out of 10 for the ground experience here in Copenhagen. The lounge was closed and the boarding process was atrocious. But I was eventually onto the plane and there were 5 rows of business class that evening. The white anti-macassar headrests make it easy to count the rows. Seat 2A for me today, which seems to be becoming my favourite seat as I never pick row 1 as I need to have my camera equipment with me through takeoff. I'll not linger on the seat as I've covered it many times before. It's an economy seat with economy legroom, even though row 2 will never find itself behind the curtain on a BA flight. The premiumisation you're paying for by buying a business class ticket comes from having an empty middle seat, which on this 23-year-old Airbus A319 was celebrated with a tray thingy. And if there's anyone out there who's never seen a tray table or has no idea how one works, you now know. And this plane was so old, BA had bought it with overhead air vents. A refurb in 2015 crammed in 11 extra seats, but each half row of 3 seats now features 2 universal plugs and USB sockets. We pushed back pretty much bang on time, which for an 8 p.m. departure was welcome. After all, there'd have been no lounge to hang out in if we'd been delayed. So as we take off, a bit more about how I booked this trip. If you try to book some trips through the BA website which involve multiple OneWorld airlines, it will fail to offer you a price and you'll need to call to book. Some multi-airline trips will price up online, but many won't. The reason for this is that these bookings need to be priced off of BA's multi-partner award chart, which is based on miles flown, and the website just can't cope. This is that chart, based on economy, but double all of those numbers for business class and treble them for a first class itinerary. BA will typically price a business redemption as at least 3 times the economy redemption cost, so the first opportunity this pricing table presents is that business class is only double the cost of economy. I'll come back to this topic when we land. Service began rapidly after takeoff. Being in row 2 helped here, and I decided to be unfaithful to the world of gin by having a bourbon and coke, served with a packet of salty snacks. Obligatory cheers shot. This was the 4th video I'd shot that day, and I recorded one more when I landed, so if I'm looking tired, that's because I was. No menus, but I went for the pork as a main, preceded with a small salad and post-seeded by a yummy pudding, and a glass of Petit Syrah from California. This was about a 100-minute flight that night, and I think that's a decent feed for a flight of that length. The flight passed quite agreeably, and before I knew it, we were coming into land. Multi-partner awards are not the simplest of trips to book. Anything you find needs to be sent to the pricing department as the taxes need to be manually calculated. They seem to also have the right of veto over itineraries if you try to cram too much into a booking. There are some articles online about booking these flights, but they all now have a number of errors in them, so read them with caution. I think those articles may well have been accurate when they were released, and I think booking agents used to have far greater discretion over what you could and couldn't book using this table. These days the pricing team has to sign everything off, and they look for a clear out and back routing between your origin and destination. I did manage to book this, which was an open jaw itinerary, so they are certainly allowed, and I chose an unusual routing to be able to experience as many different airlines as possible. All 7 of these flights have now been reviewed on this channel. So this was possible, but I think it's close to the limit of what you can get away with. And remember, this is a redemption booking which requires you to find award availability on every leg. I think I was really lucky to be able to find space on these flights at relatively short notice to get me out and back. The routing came in at a whisker under 14,000 miles, which was not a coincidence, and so priced up into the 90,000 avios band. But I flew in business class, so this cost doubled to 180,000 avios, and taxes of £640 were also added. As context, a straight redemption to Bangkok or Hong Kong on BA is at least 200,000 avios, and similar on Qatar is 180,000. So this isn't necessarily a shortcut to wonderful value, but if you're looking to mix things up by travelling on different airlines, it can be an interesting way of doing so. Breaking that cost out across the 7 flights, valuing the avios at the 0.22 of a pence they cost me each on average. Check out this video for how I got so many so cheaply. Each flight cost me this. This BA leg cost me 47 quid, which is exceptional value, as I'm sure you'll agree, but remember, I get my avios very cheaply. There's actually quite a lot more to this multi-partner awards table, and there are a couple of opportunities for taking even greater advantage than I did. I have made a video which goes into much more detail, but I felt it was far too niche to sit comfortably on this channel, so I've made it available exclusively to my patrons. If you would like to know more about redeeming avios this way, check out my Patreon package, which would then give you access to that video. Plus, you'd also get access to my WhatsApp community of over 150 people, where you can discuss your plans and get advice from myself and others who've actually booked these trips. That's probably the most outrageously direct plug I've ever made for my Patreon, but I hope you'll forgive me. To sum up the flight, the ground experience in Copenhagen was terrible, but the flight experience was good. I'm used to the seat being just an economy seat with extra elbow room. Pretty much all airlines in Europe follow this model now, unless you're lucky enough to get a wide-body plane operating a short-haul route. But the food was good, the drinks flowed, and the crew were efficient and engaging. It was a fairly typical BA experience these days. Good, but not exceptional. And at the end of the day, if BA could deliver that consistently on every flight they operate, I think most of us would be quite happy. And quickly summing up the whole 7-flight adventure I took, it was amazing. Getting to travel on so many different airlines to so many interesting places for so little cost was quite an experience, one I am looking to repeat. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please give this video a like if you did. I've already flogged my Patreon, so I won't do that again. And feel free to leave a comment, how angry would you have been with that lounge not being open? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.